Welcome back to Thriving in Ambiguity, the podcast where we unpack the complexities of technology, ideally without losing our minds. Today, it kicks off a new series, and I'm calling it Anonymous or Not Crazy Stories in IT. I think you're going to love this. Because let's be honest, if you've worked in IT for any length of time, you've likely seen some wild stuff. These are the stories that are too good not to tell, and I got tons of them. Sometimes there's a lesson, and sometimes they're just funny. And I'm not going to give them all to you. I've been in IT for over 20 years, and so trust me, I got a bunch. But I am going to tease a little bit here because there's one that's just crazy. It's the flirty teacher who left me speechless during her annual laptop update. But before that, let's dive in, starting with one that kicked off an investigation that I'll never forget. I'm titling it The Librarian and the Spanish Porn Loophole. So, one day, our school librarian walks into the IT office and says, "Hey, I think some students are in the back and they're watching porn. But every time I try to go back there and see what they're doing, they switch the screen." So my team sets up remote monitoring using Apple Remote Desktop. And sure enough, these kids were digging deep into some questionable content. The part that was annoying, though, was I paid for a content filter. We had a content filter in place, and it was supposed to block this type of stuff. But back then, filters were not advanced like today, and many of our students were Spanish speaking because they were from migrant families that had come to Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, mushroom capital of the world, if you didn't know that, to farm the fields. It turns out back then, if you had searched for adult content in Spanish, you could fly right past the filter. It was a total loophole. So not only were they watching this stuff live in the back, but they were also downloading it. And I was pissed off, and I got the bright idea and told the team to search the entire student home directory, and let's see how far this went. And boy, be careful what you wish for, because when the team scanned the sand, they found over 40 students that had saved this material to their home folders. And we were talking about over 60 terabytes of content. It was hours and hours of stuff. Some of it was actually insane. There was bestiality involving horses. There was one with peanut butter and a German Shepherd. Just can't make this stuff up. The stuff on the internet is wild. So you name it, they had it. And we could get into more of what I saw, but honestly, I've never forgotten those videos. So I'll leave it up to your imagination to imagine what German Shepherds and peanut butter and porn looked like. It's crazy. As that young IT leader, I had some brutally awkward meetings with discipline and with parents. And obviously, we invested in a much better content filtering solution after that. The next story also involves Apple Remote Desktop, and this is when Apple Remote Desktop can go wrong. Apple Remote Desktop was a powerful tool. We used it heavily. It allowed us to push out updates, monitor activity, troubleshoot things remotely like the porn. And from that above situation we just talked about, one of the guys got the bright idea to script it so that whenever you did a screenshot, it would also take the user's picture. Because one of the issues we were having was when in some of these situations when we talked to parents, they said, or the kid was like, "It wasn't me. I gave someone else my login and they downloaded the content." Okay, sure. So that's where we got the idea, hey, let's create this script. And then anytime that we do an investigation, it'll clip the person screenshot with whoever was using the computer. So it seemed like a really good idea at the time. Until a nearby school district who honestly had the exact same idea, but they were in a little bit different situation because they had a one-to-one where every student had a MacBook. See, we had carts of MacBooks, and then we also had, like, in the libraries, we had 30 iMacs. So kids weren't bringing devices home with them at that time. And so there was a local news article published. This actually went national, so it was on the morning news, where an affluent nearby school district got into some major trouble because they had a situation where they snapped a picture of a student who I believe was maybe smoking marijuana. Now, this was after hours, and I don't know what triggered them to actually look. I don't know if they were looking at something inappropriate. I don't really know the details there, but when they saw the screenshot of a student and the marijuana, so they submitted the discipline, follows up with the family, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute. You took a picture of my daughter in her bedroom? Like, seriously? You can't do that. And so this big privacy scandal broke out from that. And so while their intention was probably in the right place, it ended up totally blowing up on them and creating a totally inappropriate situation. So they really hadn't thought the whole thing through. Needless to say, this hits the national news. My superintendent calls me into his office in a panic. He said, "We're not doing this, are we?" And I said, no. I said, "We're not doing this." I said, "Our kids don't take devices home with them, but we do it internally. And here's why." And he was like, "Yeah, we probably should rethink that." So we did. And it was a huge wake up call that these tools can go from helpful to headline grabbing real quick. So it's one of those things. With great power comes great responsibility. Where have I heard that before? Luckily, we weren't the ones making the news, but we did adjust our procedures. And if we had a one-to-one, geez, that probably could have been us. And I'm glad it wasn't, because I did like my job at the time. Next one, surveillance stories. I love video surveillance stories. This one's titled "The Cafeteria Cash Thief." So while shifting into video surveillance, I absolutely loved it. Maybe I missed my calling as a detective. I don't know, but there's something rewarding about piecing together like a digital breadcrumb trail and following back what happened and doing that investigation. I don't know. There was just something about it that I loved. And so one day our business manager pulls me in his office and he says, "Hey, Steve, money's going missing from the cafeteria deposits. It's nothing huge. It's $80 here, $100 there, but it's consistent and it's getting worse." So maybe it started out as $20. I don't know. But he made the point where it was starting out brief and then now it's growing and it's getting worse. And he had no idea how this was happening because he said the bank has a lock on it. So it's got a zipper and then like a padlock on the end. And they have the key and we have the key, like the manager has the key. So basically what happens is the money's supposed to be counted after lunch. It's tallied up. There's a bank slip that's put in, and then it gets zippered up, locked, and the courier takes it to the bank. And what he said was that the slip's right, bank slip's right, all of that matches, but the money's different. So, needless to say, we need to do a little investigation. And there was no cameras in that area. So I grabbed a few of my key team members and we installed some hidden cameras over a weekend because we didn't want anyone to be the wiser. We didn't know if somehow it was a custodian. We didn't know if it was the courier. That was the thought at the time, like it had to be the courier. Somehow he must be getting into the bag. So anyway, we installed them over the weekend. We're all ready to go. Come Monday, we kind of watch live as this is all going down. And the cafeteria manager, after lunch, takes the bag out, lays all of the money out, counts it all out on the desk, writes out the deposit slip, puts everything in the bag. Okay, but then it gets weird. Rather than putting the bag in the safe, they then walk into the bathroom next to the office and with the bag in hand. And a few minutes later, she returns and puts it into the safe. The question is like, why would she be taking the bag into the bathroom? That doesn't make any sense. Next day, same exact routine. So we're like, okay, this is obvious. She's bringing the bag into the bathroom. She's taking some of the cash out, and then she's locking it back into the safe and then putting it out for the courier at the end of the day for them to pick it up. So this pretty much takes the courier off the hook. So on day 3, we're really confident. And so the business manager calls the police, lets them know the situation. And just after lunchtime, we have them ready. They're outside the cafeteria. And it's funny because as she's counting the money, putting it in the bag, going through and doing it again, as she goes to open the door, she looks up and sees the hidden camera that was poking through a hole in her ceiling tile that we had strategically cut. And she sees the camera and her face just drops. And she turns around, puts the bag in the safe. And with that, the police and the business manager walks in. It was obviously too late. So they escorted her out in cuffs. And later, she admitted to skimming the money before it ever made it to the bank. So everyone thought that the courier was the issue. Nope. Inside job. And I still don't understand why she couldn't come up with a better way to steal the money and why she raised the red flag right off the get-go by having a deposit slip that didn't match the deposit. I don't know what she was thinking there, but it's a shame because she lost a really good job as a cafeteria manager and committed a felony. But it was a fun investigation. So from my perspective, it was good. The next one, I'm titling Workman's Comp Ice Queen. Another video surveillance win. So we had a teacher who filed a workman's comp claim saying that she slipped on the ice as she was coming into the parking lot in the morning before school, and then she injured herself. So there was going to be doctor bills, there was going to be a time period off, and I believe all of that happened. And so during the claim, HR came to us. Literally, it was about 88 days after the event. And I told them, and they knew that typically we only have about 30 days of footage. That's what I told pretty much the district so that they would have a goal to say, hey, if we have an incident, we need to let technology know so they can do their investigation. But luckily, I did have 90 days. It's a little sneaky IT trick that sometimes you tell people 30, but you make sure that, you're keeping additional time. And basically, it's about the way video surveillance works. You only have so much space. So there's going to be a finite time that you can keep, because once the drives fill up, basically then they start overwriting the oldest content. But I was able to capture about 90 days, and because it varied too, because everything was recording based on movement. It wasn't recording 24 hours a day. It was basically on activity. So there was no true way to say exactly how much, which is why I told them the 30 days. Luckily for us, we still had the footage. It was still there. And we watched her as she pulled into her parking space. She gets out, walks into the building with a limp. There was no fall. She clearly got injured, probably at home or on the way into work. And she shifted the blame to us to pay those bills, to get that paid time off. And so that one clip saved the district boatloads of money. So it's one of those things that aren't talked about. A lot of times video surveillance, it's there to do the investigation after the fact. But in cases like workman's comp, boy, there's an awful lot of money. And honestly, I don't exactly know how much we saved in that event, but my guess is it significantly paid for a portion of what that video surveillance cost to install. And it's like a secondary use case. So as you're making your, I would say, return on investment as to why you'd be putting video surveillance into your environment, think about it from that perspective as well, because it can pay for itself very quickly. And when it's able to capture an event like that. Okay. The next one, still video surveillance. It's the iPad hustler. One thing that I used to like to do was hire student interns to help the IT teams. This started very early in my career, and where we used to start with summer help, and we used to hire about 6 students, which were always students of the district that were interested in IT, and then we would teach them. And a lot of times, the kids who ended up being the best would end up getting full-time jobs with the district if when something opened up. So we were able to build that future IT talent, and it worked out great. I had some of the best IT staff come from that program. And so when I was at Votech, we had a very similar program, but we actually had it going on during the year because we had what was like a co-op where our senior students were supposed to get jobs. And so I would actually hire them and pay them as students to work within the district. It wasn't a lot of money, but once again, they're getting great experience, great training, and it allowed us to potentially build a pipeline once again to find people to work in the IT team. And so in this one school, and typically the way this would work was the intern would report to the building technician. So we had a building technician in every building, and they would be their assistant. And one day we noticed that some iPads were missing, but we weren't able to piece together where it was happening. And then we actually had someone contact the district and saying, "Hey, I purchased this iPad from somebody, and it says it belongs to Votech. Can you remove that so I can install my own stuff on it?" And we're like, and we looked into it. We're like, no, that came from this school. And so we started to do a little bit of an investigation. Obviously, we were telling them that, hey, this is stolen property and no, you can give it back. And then they dropped the dime on who they bought it from. And then it was like, oh, that's our intern. And so then we looked through video surveillance and we were able to find that he would go into our storage closet, which he had access to after school, and he would grab an iPad or two and drop it into his school bag. Ultimately, through looking at the video surveillance, we saw that he took about 12 iPads and 2 MacBooks over the course of about, 45 days. And he was basically selling them for a few $100s each on the black market before he got caught. So, this story gets crazier because we bring him in with his father and we have a conversation, and I asked the question. I said, obviously this is unacceptable and we're very disappointed. And the father says, you put a kid in a candy shop, you can't be surprised when he takes a few pieces for himself. I was like, what? That's not how this works. I could not believe the attitude. And then when a parent has that type of attitude towards a situation, if that's me, I'm literally losing my mind at my kid. Dude, what are you thinking? Now, you can't be surprised when a parent's, you can't expect him not to take some. It's okay. So we recovered just about all the devices because we had the tracking software and they couldn't be erased or really couldn't have anything added to them. But yeah, that quote stuck with me forever. I was the most baffling parent response that I'd ever heard. Okay. Now, I teased this one and I'm titling it, Don't Look at My Nudie Pics. So as we close out, let's talk about the single most awkward laptop update I ever did. Now, I was not an IT leader at this time. I was a technician. And every year we did a laptop refresh. And typically we did it over the summer. And we had the bright idea. We said, hey, because some teachers would complain, hey, I go away for the summer and I'm not around. So me having to bring my laptop back is a huge inconvenience. So we're like, okay, we'll try to find and deal with some of those teachers starting in May. That way we can grab them before they leave for the summer. It was a great idea. It actually worked really well. And so this one teacher volunteered. And so she comes into the IT office, and our office was like an old classroom. It was right next to the library in the high school. And so my desk was as soon as you came in the office, then my manager's desk, and then another technician, and then there was another technician over here. So there's basically 4 of us, and then the servers were in the back room. So she comes in, and she was a very kind of flirty, she was very attractive teacher, and she says, as she hands me her MacBook. And I said, oh, thank you very much. I said, I'll be in contact with you. I'll probably have it back to you in a couple days. And so she turns to leave. And as she's partially opening the door, and she giggles, and she turns to me and says, now don't be looking at my nudie pics. And she giggles and she walks out. And I was like, what? And I literally turned to the guys in the office and I'm like, did she just say, don't look at my nudie pics? And they're like, yeah. And so, like, literally, naturally, I had to look. So within like seconds, I was like, boom, 40 plus photos of her in a hotel room in all kinds of poses, full nude, erotic positions. And I'm guessing it was her husband that took them. I don't, it was absolutely wild. And it left me speechless. And so I don't know what her deal was, and I don't know what her end goal was and why she would, because I never would have looked. Like, that's not what we typically would do. We would update the operating system. We would check some things, update some software. That'd pretty much be it. So for her to say that was crazy. So I said to my boss, my manager, I said, what do you want to do here? And he said, we do nothing. We do not speak of this. Those were different times. That's going back about 20 plus years. Today, she probably would have been fired for inappropriate content on her device for sure. If we would have been found out and not have acted on it, we probably would have been fired. But we definitely kept it quiet. We did not say anything. And like I said, I don't know what her end game was. I was engaged at the time. I was pretty happy. And so I backed away from that one real quick. I didn't take the bait. But like I said, it was probably the wildest thing that I've ever seen. But there's people do crazy things. And to put that on a district-owned device, didn't see that one coming. But that was it. So that's the first episode of Anonymous or Not, Crazy Stories in IT. Like I said, I got a bunch more. But honestly, what I'd like to do is I'd like to hear your stories. And once again, we can be anonymous or not. You let me know. So hit me up. You can email me at steve@thrivinginambiguity.com, or you can message me on LinkedIn, or you can hit me up on the comments here on YouTube, because I'd love to share your stories, anonymously or not, your choice. So I hope you've enjoyed this new episode, this new feature. If you did, please subscribe to the channel so when these new ones drop, you'll be able to hear it. Leave a review and help spread the word. Because in IT, the truth is almost always stranger than fiction. And until next time, stay sharp and keep thriving in ambiguity.